see. And welcome to Kat Monahan running for Select Board. Kat, we're happy to have you here, and guessing you might know most of these people, but we'll go ahead and do our normal usual quick introductions so you know
sure.
who we are, and then we'll turn it over to you. So Elaine, do you want to start? I see you in my upper left.
I'm relatively new in Natick. Most of the time I've been noted as Joshua's mother. And I'm just celebrating my 90th birthday and I'm still giddy.
Very good, thanks. And Kathleen.
Hi, Kat. Welcome. I'm a resident of Natick for 33 years. I was a librarian by profession, and so when I moved to Natick, I got involved with the public library here and eventually became a trustee. And I was invited to the group 2 weeks ago as a candidate for the board for re-election, and I liked it. I've stayed on.
So, great. Carrie?
Good morning. Hi, Kat. Carrie Bobfield. I've been here a few months short of 20 years, town meeting member, concerned environmentalist, and maybe you brought some good luck, Kat. I'm ironically was tasked with cat sitting. Thursday, my ex-girlfriend from several years ago had to go fly to Lima, Peru to spend time with family. And I hadn't seen the cat since Thursday morning.
Oh, wow.
I just found it like an hour ago.
Yikes.
Yay.
Yeah.
A little nervous.
Leslie was over here last night. We were like going all up on the third floor trying to find this cat and couldn't find it. And finally, so you brought some good luck. Help me find the cat.
Very good. You can put that on your campaign.
I will, yeah. Finding animals.
Yeah. Bill.
Hi, Bill Ramage. Worked with Pat on Keep Natick Beautiful, on environmental issues, concerns, and happy to be here. Hear what you have to say.
Bill's also another town meeting member running for re-election. So,
right.
Carol?
You're in District 4, vote for me.
Carol, you're on mute. You got to come off mute. There you
Hi, good morning. Not to bore you, but I'm another town meeting member. And so otherwise I've lived in Natick for over 50 years and I live on Lake Cochituate, so I've been involved for many years with the lake. And now I'm, as I say, a town meeting member, but very happy that you're here. We're getting educated so well about different people that are now involved with the town. It's really wonderful. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, Carol. Tom? Tom, you got to come off mute. Yeah.
Hi, Kat. Yeah, I've been a Natick resident for about 33 years or so. Town meeting member, but only for a year. And I'm a racial and climate activist in my spare time. So welcome. Glad to have you join us.
Thanks, Tom. Sally?
Good morning, Kat. I've only lived here for about 6 years, but I really appreciate candidates coming to Coffee with a Purpose and chatting with us, because this is a great, you're surrounded by people that are real town movers and shakers, and I'm sure you're going to be one. I enjoy learning about you, and thanks for taking the time to be with us.
Thanks, Sally. Pat?
Yes, good morning. Very good to see you, Kat. And I'm Pat Conaway, the trash and trails guy, I guess, for Natick or whatever. Keep Natick Beautiful. And we're very eager to hear what you have to say, what you think is important, that we need to address here in Natick. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Pat. And Pat was actually the guy that started the Coffee with a Purpose several years ago now. Brinley.
Good morning, Kat. Thank you for being here. I'm a 23-year resident of Natick. Served over 10 years on the Natick Recycling Committee until we disbanded and it became it morphed into the Sustainability Committee. Very grateful for that. I was on the Pay As You Throw Task Force, lifetime environmentalist. And I'm really happy you're here and to hear what you have to say. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Brinley. And Sarah?
Hi, I'm Sarah. Also yet another town meeting member, also interested in environmental issues. I'm a geologist and spent my career doing hazardous waste stuff, trying to clean up that. So that's my thing. And we're, as others have said, very glad you're here to chat with us.
I am not a town meeting member. I attempt to moderate this group, so happy to have you here, and I'll turn the floor over to you.
All right, thank you, Doug. Thank you all for being here. Guess what? I'm a town meeting member. I represent Precinct 3 since 2020. And it kind of started because I was reading this book called Represent, which is by like a political speechwriter and then also a comedian that I like a lot named June Diane Raphael. And it basically was like how to get involved in your community, whether that means your town's town meeting, or maybe you might want to be like on the Veterans Affairs Committee. It was kind of just like a workbook and guide for being in touch with where you live that way, which was something that I was really hoping to do. And part of the book, it's very much geared towards getting women involved. And then I think the third chapter was called Men Aren't Waiting. And so it said like, stop reading this book and go get elected. So I did. So I don't know what like chapters 4 through 10 are about, but it was really great because, you know, just like in a lot of job, kind of like applying for jobs, it's been shown that men will apply for jobs that they're underqualified for, where women won't apply for a job unless they think that they are the best and only candidate, which is not the right way to do it. It's like a self-perception bias. So some of you have lived in Natick longer than I've been alive. But I've been here since 2015 when my husband and I bought a house in West Natick. And yeah, I'm an accountant and an environmentalist. I'm someone that's always been an accountant, no matter how hard I've tried to escape it. I got an undergraduate degree in ancient Greek and Latin. And then Boston University hired me to be their vendor relations coordinator. I don't know why, but I mean, I know why. I was good at it and I was too stupid to say no. And so I did that for a while. I got an MBA in, what was it in? They changed what the degree is called now through the Boston University Questrom School. When I got it, it was an MBA in government and nonprofit management. Yeah. And also finance, just like separately finance MBA. So I'm pretty comfortable with the numbers that I've seen, whether it's at town meeting. And then in 2021, I joined the finance committee to kind of like get deeper into that. I felt like town meeting, I was kind of finding everything out too late. Because it was hard, especially the first town meetings I had were all virtual. So I really had no idea what was going on. I got sent this like 200-page book in the mail that I had no idea what I was supposed to do with. And then we just start these meetings that went 3-4 hours at night that no one knew what they were doing with those first virtual ones. It was chaos. So I got through, I think, 2 or 3 virtual town meetings before I started doing finance committee. And that really helped me figure it out. Like seeing it at that stage of the process, the articles and how the budget is being made and things are going back between select board and then back to the planning board or whoever, that helped me a lot. And then writing the book was great. I liked doing that a lot. I know that Linda Walschlager is upset that I'm not like on finance committee this round to help with the book, but we've got a really good roster of people on that committee right now that I'm excited for them for this town meeting session. Yeah, where am I going? Yeah, I've been an accountant all the time. Oh, right now I'm at work. I'm at Landry's Bicycles on Route 9. And this is my like nerdiest thing on my desk, book about bicycling science.
Oh, wow.
Or I could show you the employee stock option program handbook, because we're also 100% employee owned as of last year, which is really cool for someone that's like into finance. That's something that I really love. And talking about just, I mean, we're a bicycle store, so like the environmentalism and climate resiliency aspects are baked in. Like that's part of who we are already. But having the employee stock ownership program is a way to create generational wealth for the people in the bike shop, who are people that don't usually have that opportunity. So what we're doing is every year the retained earnings, okay, I'm gonna back up. I don't want to spend too much time on this. The employees get all the stocks, and then when you leave, you get money that you didn't even have to like put away for or anything like that. It's just by virtue of working here, you're accruing value in the shares that you're assigned every year, and you don't have to do anything extra. So it's been really cool to like, I'm on our ESOP committee, so I get to go to different stores and talk to people about it and say, yes, you might have your 401k and like Social Security is still a thing, but this is something that's happening just for you, that, you know, there's no strings attached other than you have to become fully vested and wait until retirement age. And then you get to enjoy the profits that we've all created, which is a really cool idea. And especially we've gone to some of these ESOP conferences, and it's a financial structure and financial model. So it's not industry specific. Like we've talked to people that work for specialty machining companies that make like really delicate parts that go inside an artificial heart, or maybe they're just tech consultants, or there was one company that was there that was a family of auto body shops around Maine. So it's all different kinds of people that are all benefiting from this kind of structure that we've come up with. And it's really cool. We've come up with, I don't know, some lawyer came up with as a tax benefit 100 years ago, and now we all get to enjoy it. So yeah, climate and like the environment is a huge important goal for me. I bike everywhere. You might have seen me biking around town. Both of my bikes have campaign signs on them that say Cat Monahan for select board, and then in parentheses, that's me, because the other signs aren't attached to me. Yeah, we take our kids everywhere on our bikes. I have two. They're 6 years old and 3 years old. So I have a kindergartner at Brown Elementary School. And in talking with the Transportation Advisory Committee chair, something I think the select board should be doing is lowering the speed limit. We've already authorized it through town meeting to adopt the Massachusetts general law, saying that, you know, allowing us to do it. And now it's something that select board would have to implement. And so far they have not, despite the Transportation Advisory Committee recommending it. And I don't really see a reason not to do it at this point. I think it's one of the many things that we'll have to do to improve how people get around Natick by reducing their car dependency, which people don't want to think about, but it's just something that we'll have to do if we want to preserve the climate as we have it. And right now it's not the climate that I want. Like people tell me, I can't believe you're biking right now. And I say, oh, did you know this is the coldest February you're ever going to live in for the rest of your life? Like, if like, I don't know what to tell you. I have to bike in this. I can't, I don't know. It gets me all riled up. But anyway, I think that reducing the speed limit to 25 miles per hour is something that the select board could do very easily, that would improve the safety and just the, I don't know, overall experience of being in Natick. Along with, there are some places in Natick that are just so dangerous to be a pedestrian or even a driver. For example, I live off of Mill Street in West Natick near the Brown School. And we have a school crossing at the end of our block where my neighbor that lives on the corner of Mill Street has had his fence driven through by cars, I think 3 times in the last 2 years. So it's obviously an infrastructure problem. Like speeding is encouraged on Mill Street. There's nothing that makes them slow down or, I don't know, try and like obey the actual speeds that they should be obeying. When I talked with Abby Brown from the Transportation Advisory Committee. She said one of the things that they had looked into, because raised continuous sidewalks and speed bumps are kind of, they're harder for plows, and like there's reasons that they won't work everywhere. But she was saying in places like that, Natick could maybe put, for example, like large concrete planters on either side of the sidewalk, on either side of the crosswalk where it begins, to make the road more narrow and force cars to slow down as they go through that crosswalk area, or even putting like a large concrete planter in the middle. So these are things that would make the road less easy to speed down without compromising the plows or street sweepers or whoever. I'm not sure the next thing I want to say. There's so many things that I wish that the select board could do. I've been in these finance committee meetings and it just feels like I'm too impatient for this. I can't stand when things go back and forth so much. In particular, we did in the finance committee recommend favorable action on 246 North Main Street last round, which is a vacant property that the town holds in tax title. And Natick Affordable Housing Trust put forth an article saying like, make the select board give us this, which is kind of bold. And some of these articles are kind of citizen petitions. I don't know if that one would count as a citizen petition. It's so difficult because people, they don't do that as a first choice. You know, no one would want to gather 100 signatures and everything if the department in the town that is supposed to be handling this could do it. And so to have the Affordable Housing Trust come to the finance committee for advice on how they could make the select board give them a property that the town already held in tax title to build affordable housing, and have the select board say, maybe we should refer it and think about it for another 2 years because MassDOT is using this to store equipment for the Route 27 project. That doesn't feel fair to me. Like, why are we wasting 2 years building affordable housing to let MassDOT have some concrete barriers there? And why does the select board not want to give the property to the Natick Affordable Housing Trust if they have no other purpose for it? It didn't seem right. And it seemed like we were making the process too hard, and that felt wrong. And fortunately, finance committee, you know, we talked it out. We brought up some of these same issues, and then in part led by me, we recommended favorable action instead of referring it back to whomever, because we were pretty confident that if town meeting saw this, they would support it. And there's no real good reason not to do it if the only reason is we don't feel like doing it now. And I think Natick needs more of that. We need more fast. It's not fast moving. It's still going to take 1.5 years. We need to stop getting in our own way is what we really need to do. Yeah, I was proud of that one. I'm glad that that will be moving forward. I know that on, PSA, Wednesday night, select board is going to decide on 5 Auburn Street. So if you care, you should go or attend on Zoom or write them an email. Personally, I really support the Metro West Collaborative Development Project of the 30 plus 100% affordable housing units. Natick Affordable Housing Trust put out their own plan for senior housing. I think that's great too. It's not my first choice, but obviously I'd like that better than the Trask company building another 12 condos. I don't like that. I was in one of those select board meetings where they were going through the different RFPs, and, you know, commercial housing contractors build for profit. And yeah, 12 condos will make them more money than 11, but they're trying to make the most money per unit. And that's not a long range vision for Natick. I don't want that to be the 5 Auburn Street. And the idea that this particular company, although many of them do it in Natick, are knocking down single family homes, which might have 40 years ago been a so-called like starter home for a family. They're knocking them down and replacing them with homes that are immediately sold for 1.2 million or more. And this happens, by their own admission, 60 or 70 times a year in Natick. And zero money from those transactions goes to affordable housing. Whereas when a developer builds 10 new houses, which would be a subdivision, they have to contribute to the Affordable Housing Trust. So to me, it seems unfair that a company can do this 60 or 70 times in Natick and not pay anything into affordable housing. And they sort of bragged about the one subdivision that they did pay. They said, oh yes, we just sent our first $200,000 check to the Affordable Housing Trust. And I mean, that's great, but at the same time, you could have been sending 10,000 for, I don't know, each of those 60 or 70 houses you've done in the last year. And why aren't you? Why is that not something that we are considering? It just, yeah, it frustrates me a lot because I have neighbors, the one in particular that's next to me, the house is getting knocked down. It doesn't look great. It has all of its siding off. It's just like a bunch of wooden boards that I can see through at night. And it'll be that way for 2 or 3 months. And I don't know, I'm shoveling the sidewalk there because kids can't get through. And I think they're waiting for permits. So it's really just a vacant shell of a house for 2 or 3 months. And it breaks my heart because that neighbor, she didn't want to move. It's this woman, Lonnie Blanchard, that we loved a lot. She's in her 80s and her husband had died a few years ago. Like, these things happen in Natick all the time in neighborhoods. And it didn't make sense for her to live in that house. But I also don't think she wanted it to get completely torn down and look unrecognizable a year from now. Yeah, so I'm not sure. I don't like that housing situation. And I think the Natick Select Board could be more proactive in creating affordable housing, because right now we're not doing it. And because we're not creating it, we're letting the knocked down, turned luxury housing to grow exponentially without anything else competing with it. There's no other housing options being created in Natick besides ultra luxury. Or I don't know. I mean, at this point, $1.2 million house isn't barely ultra luxury, but like, I don't know. I couldn't afford to live in it. I couldn't afford to buy my house today. And yeah, I'm gainfully employed. My husband's a union carpenter. There's no reason that families like that shouldn't be, what am I trying to say? Families like that should be able to move to Natick and afford to live in Natick and have their kids here. And it's just not happening. Which is really discouraging. And yeah. How long are you all going to let me do stream of consciousness? Does anyone have a question?
Very
talk for
questions
hours,
have
but I don't
occurred
want-
to me. I wanted to let you have your piece. That's fine. We could turn it into a conversation. It certainly sounds like your candidacy is driven kind of by, I don't know, passion for inaction and passion for fairness. Yeah. Some issues are complex issues and do take a while to resolve. I'm just wondering, how do you feel sitting so far as an observer, but if you were to be elected on the select board, how has the select board done on the whole Natick Dam issue? You know, it's been already a multi-year process. They're certainly forecasting that it will continue to be a multi-year process to check off all the boxes and do a thorough enough analysis. What kind of a grade would you give the board on their work so far?
I mean, in some ways, I think it was an impossible task. So I think they've done well. I know it's tricky because I do think the select board has done a pretty good job letting people be heard, getting the different perspectives. I don't know. People were always going to be dissatisfied. There's someone that emailed me just this morning that I know was very passionate about preserving and repairing the dam, that I had spoken with at finance committee saying, I'm so glad you're running. Maybe we can change this. It doesn't have to be torn down. And I was kind of surprised when I got that email this morning, because I kind of thought that was well settled, that I don't think that dam is being repaired. So if people are still emailing me thinking that that could be changed, I guess the select board has not done as good a job as I thought they would. Yeah, I mean, I think it needs to come down. That's my like personal, I'm a Natick resident opinion.
Let me ask one follow-on question
Yeah.
to that, and then I see Pat's got his hand on up, and I want to recognize also that both Bruce and Catherine are on the call this morning, so they may want to weigh in on the process in that particular issue. But it brings to mind a question that Ricky or Jay Ball would ask if they were on the call, because they asked last election this question of how do you manage the balance of in a representative government like this, what you feel strongly about, but what you think constituents or the town wants to do. What's more important? How would you balance that?
I mean, what's most important is what's best for Natick. That's an easy question. I think that question touches on something that I've been thinking about with how citizens or residents interact with the different boards. And it seems like there are so many people that find out about a particular meeting, whether it's select board or finance committee, they come and they usually are not informed of like what is the actual conversation we're having tonight and what's the questions that we should be asking, where sometimes they just want to be heard, and people want to be heard and they should be heard. I don't know if they should be heard during the select board meeting if it's something that's not really on topic at all and they just kind of want to talk about their feelings on something, because that's not the select board's job that night. Like, I do think that we can do a better job of reaching out to residents and getting them heard, but not in these contexts. Especially because I think there needs to be some education on what, for example, some residents get a postcard saying there's a hearing because you're in a butter and you need to come to this meeting if you want to hear us talk about it. And they get a postcard. They might not even totally understand what it's about. They go to the meeting, and then the actual discussion of what they're there for doesn't happen until 2.5 hours later. And by then they were already probably kind of confused and not happy, and now they're just mad. And that's not helping us. It's not helping the resident. It's not helping select board. It's derailing the meetings and making them like more tense, more long. And I think we need to have a better process for that, to tell, I don't know if it's having like a separate meeting for abutters to say, we do these kinds of things on whatever, every other Wednesday at 7 p.m. You're going to hear, like, that's the abutter time and we'll all talk about it, you know, something like that, to give them better expectations of what they can say, or like what select board can actually do with what they're telling them. Because in a lot of cases, basically, you know, if it's within whatever the zoning specs are, select board isn't going to say no, you know. Yeah, that's end of thought. Sorry.
No, that's fine. Thank you. Pat, you've got your hand up. What?
Yeah, I'm interested in some of your ideas. Big fan of some of the things you're trying to do. It sounds like you think the select board has a more creative and a stronger role to play in terms of developing our affordable housing and helping to make Natick a better place to ride a bike and walk and be a pedestrian. There are certain areas of the town that I think are just so pedestrian unfriendly and bicycle unfriendly. It's scary.
I tried to go from my office to Panera yesterday, and I thought I was going to die.
It's just awful. I mean, I completely support the that kind of concept, and I don't know what you said, the bicycle or the transportation committees or some of the folks that are trying to advocate for this stuff it seems like if the select board were more of an aggressive champion of affordable housing and getting people out of their cars and bicycling and walking to things, you know, fortunately we have the Cochitiot Rail Trail, which is a great thing now, but you know, it takes so much time, and the hurdles that are, you're more familiar with them than I, but the hurdles for, you know, you have to go through zoning, and then there's parking, and then there's this whole smart growth concept, which I think the town is trying to embrace. I mean, not just the board, but Jamie Erickson and all the folks that are the big planners in our town. But it seems like the select board could become, and you seem to represent that sort of concept of being more of an advocate and champion, which should include, you know, affordable housing, transportation, bicycle safety, pedestrian, and the last, oh, well, the whole climate issue of our, you know, greenhouse gases. And other people on this panel here know a lot more about than I do. But I think I'd certainly like to see you keep pushing all those things forward.
Thank you. I'm active. I'm not good at sitting down and shutting up. Yeah, I think the select board could be more, I don't know if I want to say aggressive, but proactive in getting us closer to these goals that we have. One thing that I hadn't mentioned yet, but I would love to see a select board sponsored article come to town meeting soon to adopt the Massachusetts general law that allows paid family and medical leave. Because right now, municipalities were never part of that. And so they would have to opt in to allow their employees to take advantage of the state's paid leave, which to me seems like, why wouldn't we do that? It's not a cost on the town. I think it's like 0.45% included in the payroll tax. And it would unlock, like, talk about leaving state money on the table. It would unlock this benefit for all of these employees without having to write it into the contracts, or for a lot of them that aren't on contracts, like cafeteria staff, they could just go on paid leave and not have to worry about what millions of Americans worry about, which is, what if I get sick or have a child and can't afford to stay in my house? So that's something that, like, why isn't the select board doing that? We did it last year for the military paid leave, which I supported. I think that was great. But to leave out all of family and medical leave seems shocking and wrong to do that to our employees. Yeah, I want an aggressive select board. I don't know. I don't want to use the word aggressive, but I want one to be aggressive.
Right. Good. Carrie, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, just a couple questions, and get to the point, I guess, of my question. You mentioned the other property, 246, that you're looking, I guess it's a tax title loan property.
Yeah.
Randy Johnson of the Affordable Housing Trust hired me a couple years ago to manage the property at 299 301 Bacon Street, which you probably are familiar with. And I've been trying to work with Jamie Erickson and Paul Joseph to, right now it's still sort of in the town's jurisdiction, if you will. We're trying to get the title moved over so it's actually the Affordable Housing Trust, and it's taken a year or so of back and forth. I don't know if you have any insight about that. Maybe something you could talk about a little bit later. I was 4 years on town meeting now, and we did the whole thing with the virtual things, and it seems like such a sort of antiquated way of doing business sometimes. And by the time things get to the warrant gets to us, it seems like FinCom really pretty much rubber stamped everything. It's a foregone conclusion as to, you know, how things are going to go. I don't know, is that the best form of government?
I don't think so. I mean, it's the one that we've got right now. If someone told me to make a government for Natick today, I probably wouldn't make a 180 person town meeting. And like,
you only get 110 people showing up, maybe.
Right. That's something. Yeah, town meeting, we barely have quorum. Like, there's barely an elected quorum.
Yeah.
At some points. Yeah, and I think it favors people who I don't know, have that much time on their hands that can show up to these meetings. And I mean, personally, I like to know what I'm doing. So it's not just show up to the meetings, it's like read this book, find the finance committee meeting, and like click on all those articles. And that's when I realized that I should be joining the finance committee so that I could like get this done beforehand and know what I'm talking about in town meeting. But not everyone can do that. And I don't even know if everyone should do that. Like, I'm not sure. Yeah, I've been trying to get my neighbors to run for town meeting. I'm in precinct 3. I think we had 6 vacancies this election coming up and 0 people running for them, or maybe 1.
Carol Berkowitz is in your precinct.
You interested?
Well, she's already a town meeting member. But
Oh,
the
sorry.
real question I want to ask, and I was very happy to hear you talk about the environment, along with some other people. I was co-founder of Renewable Natick. I should give a shout out to Bill Ramage. He was a big part of getting things going there. And I was appointed by the select board, appointed to the select board, to the sustainability committee, where I was sort of liaison between, Renewable Natick and what was going on there. But turned out the Renewable Natick was sort of a campaign more than it really was an organization. Once we got town meeting to pass our resolution back in October 2018, there wasn't too much to do. My question to you is sort of, we did have a plan with Jillian sort of trying to get to 100% renewable by 2030 with the clean renewable portfolio standard and clean energy standard. But it would require the town to sort of increase its own mandates for getting to a higher percentage. What do you think you could do if you are elected to sort of push that through? You're a scrapper. It sounds like you're
Yeah.
get things done.
Do you mean town mandates like on itself, like making the schools net zero and town buildings, or do you mean like town-wide mandate?
I think the select board has made a commitment to increase the amount of renewable electricity by, I think, 5% per year. Bill, maybe so that we get to this 2030 level of 100%, 100% renewable, net zero emissions theoretically.
Yeah.
Is it net zero by 2030? That's what they're yeah, that's it.
I didn't do all my eco-native climate homework yet, but yeah, I don't know specifically like what I think the select board should do to push us closer to that. I mentioned that I don't really love the knockdown and rebuild of single families. And when I was talking to a neighbor and he told me that they had all gas, everything in this brand new house, I was shocked. I was like, oh, we're still doing that all over town.
Yeah.
And that's not gonna push us in the right direction. I don't know if we could say like no gas in new construction, because I feel like people would riot, but yeah, that's not getting us closer for sure. I don't know if we can, I'm not sure what select board power could be as far as like incentive or mandates to get us closer to that. I would like to, probably try to start the focus on the town buildings, and because that seems like it would be easiest to sorry, people are walking in now, lead by example of just saying like, look, we've made the Morse Library net zero and we're gonna bring it to this town building next.
Yeah, did you want to chime in some more? Or
I just have a question. Are there resources through CPA and the Inflation Reduction Act that are available now for communities to move more quickly towards some of these sustainability goals? So, lowering our carbon footprint and so
I do think that a lot of the CPA funds could be put towards sustainability efforts, whether that's like building upgrades or just improving walking and biking paths, creating places for people to park their bikes. Or I'm not sure how much of the CPA could be used. I liked the idea in the 5 Auburn Street discussion of like an MWRTA bus going to South Natick like that again, like I think someone said the shorter van used to go there. So yeah, if we could use CPA funding to get something like that, like a pilot shuttle, to see if we could reduce the amount of cars going in and out of a certain neighborhood, I'd love to see it.
If I could ask one more question,
Yeah.
about the affordable housing, the Affordable Housing Trust had a little get together at Moore's Tavern about close to a month ago, and two gentlemen were there, Billy Werner and Dave Brigham, I think, who were both sort of trying to push something through with affordable housing. And I know Billy's kind of pushing, there's a plot of land adjacent to AMVETS. It's kind of on the water there. That's really sort of just.
Yeah, I did see something about that AMVETS location recently.
Yeah. So hopefully he's going to be a speaker at one of these Coffee with a Purpose in the not too distant future. But I know that's an ideal location, for it. It's just, kind of checking off all the boxes and jumping through the hoops to, make something happen.
Yeah.
I was really, I was kind of disheartened. I think it was one of the first articles that I kind of like saw in one of my first town meetings. But at one point there was a proposal for a veterans housing project at the corner of Mill Street and West Central Street, like near Roche Brothers, the Henry Wilson site. And I think that would have been a great opportunity. And it's unfortunate that it didn't happen because it's, located next to grocery. It's right near the school. You can walk to the train. Like, it has so many things going for it. And I get so frustrated when people say, oh, there's going to be parking. Do you know what it'll do if there's 30 more cars on that corner every day? And nothing. It won't do anything. I promise you. You're not going to notice 30 more cars out of a place that has 20,000 cars a day. You just won't. Like, and some of those people might not have cars. It seemed to people that drive all the time everywhere, it seems unthinkable that a person could live without a car. But when the 5 Auburn Street proposal, someone was saying, like, well, they're each going to have 2 or 3 cars. And it's like, well, if you have a 3-bedroom apartment because you make 30% of the average median income, you're probably a single parent. Like, it's not likely that you have 2 incomes in the household. So you might be a single parent, or maybe you have one parent who can't work for one reason or another. You probably have some children. Children don't drive. They're not bringing their cars. You probably can't afford more than 1 car if you can even afford one. So it's like, there are people living in those worlds that don't have cars and like will not be bringing 16 5-year-olds to their birthday party that are each driving themselves. Like, this is not happening in affordable housing communities or most communities. Yeah, I hope we can get more affordable housing built in Natick. And when I say more, I mean any.
Thank you. I appreciate the way you kind of think through the reality of when people make a blanket statement. Like, think about what you're actually saying. A few hands up. Kathleen.
Thanks. Kat, circling back a little bit to when we were just talking about town meeting and difficulty getting a quorum of elected members, or difficulty having all of our districts with representation, precincts with representation. Do you have thoughts about how we can encourage better engagement among more residents, how we help them to understand that either volunteering or being elected matters, or just following the issues and understanding the impact of these on their lives and their families? Do you have thoughts about how we can just get more people aware and involved?
Yeah, okay. First, I want to give a huge shout out to the Natick Report, because I love them. And they're doing like invaluable work that people don't realize, that local journalism is vital, because the town website is incomprehensible. And like, you need someone to read it and go to these meetings and tell you what's happening, even if you're someone like me that already kind of knows what's happening and tries to follow it. So yeah, big shout out to local news Natick Report. Second, I think that a way to get more of Natick involved in government would maybe to be go through the schools. When my daughter started kindergarten, we got a lot of Natick literature. Like, we'd already been living in Natick, but then we got, these are different programs across town. You should get involved in the PTO. This is the Spark Kindness. I would love it if there was a flyer like that for the kindergarten parents saying, Natick has a government and you're part of it. Like, even if it's just one page saying, you know, maybe a blurb from a parent like me that joined town meeting saying, like, I thought it was going to be really hard, but it ended up being manageable and I'm glad I did it and I made all these connections throughout town. I think we could do things like that pretty easily that are just not being done right now. Like, no one asked me to run for town meeting. I don't know. Who asked you guys to run for town meeting?
Thanks. Thank you.
Anyone? No?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Bill, you got your hand up?
Yeah, in answer to your last question, I think Coffee with a Purpose folks and people in the environmental community encouraged me to get another voice for renewable and to be more environmentally conscious. I had a very technical question about the CPA board. Do you know who makes the appointments to that? I understand there are some appointments that are in the law or the article or whatever around the different, open space and affordable housing and so on. Do you know who appoints the vacant positions? There are 4, I believe.
I don't know, but I think it is select board. Just based
Okay.
on what I'm remembering from the article that was voted by town meeting on the CPA. I thought it
Okay,
was.
thank you. Thank you. Yeah,
But
and just
again,
one.
I could be wrong.
One quick, well, maybe Bruce or Catherine can weigh in on that, but one other comment, back to what Carrie was talking about, I believe the town has not adopted the 100% renewable energy for the town and the school. And I mean, I know they're 2 different entities sort of, but that is something that I think we need to do. So I would be interested in having that happen. Okay, Bruce may be able to answer my question, but thank you.
Yeah, Bruce, go ahead.
You're muted, Bruce.
Yeah, Bruce, you got to come off mute. Bruce,
that'll work better.
Yeah.
Very good.
So, as far as the CPC committee, which I think was your question, I'm going to go over here because I'm pointing right at a light. Okay. It will have, the proposed article is 9 members, 5 of which have to be certain positions. One of them is Conservation Commission, one is Historic District or Historical Commission. I'm doing this from memory, so bear with me. Historic Commission, Planning Board, Conservation Commission, and one other one. And then there are 4 at-large positions. So what the article before town meeting this spring is to create that committee. Then those people get appointed and the select board approves them, the 5 nominees from the different departments. It's like Kat would know this, like the finance committee representative to the schools, for their budget sort of thing. So the select board, would approve those people and then nominate or solicit that's the wrong word, people from applying for the remaining 4. And we'd be looking at people who have the experience that, is in affordable housing, is in recreation, rehabilitation, open space acquisition, all those sorts of features. And there's one more within the CPA. So we'd be looking, and then what would happen is the CPC would be formed. They'd analyze what the needs were, put forward some sort of recommendation to town meeting. Town meeting would then vote on it. Town meeting is the funding, right? Town meeting authorizes. They're very much like Congress. They say up or down on whether they should spend it on that. If they opt not to spend it on that particular project, that money goes into a separate fund and rolls over to the next year. So let's say we have 1.5 million one year, decide now there are no projects that are that we want to spend that money on this particular year. It just rolls over, and then you accumulate more money in the fund.
Thank you.
Thanks. I saw Catherine had her hand up, but then she lowered it. So maybe Bruce addressed the same point. Pat?
Yes, I was going to ask you, Kat, about the, you're talking about how the housing industry, the development industry is like a juggernaut, and the forces of the market just make, housing kind of a profitable for these teardowns of, starter houses and then building these McMansion millionaire $1 million homes. So it seems like we have advocates in Natick who are trying to slow that process down or get it more diversified so that there can be more fairness and affordability. But I just don't see, I'm just curious, how do you think the select board, how can you get the select board to really start pushing that more effectively? Because it seems like the power of the industry is just so amazing. And the planning board tries to slow it down, the zoning board, but it's just like somebody at one of our last meetings said that in Natick there's been like 2 affordable houses built in the last 30 or 40 years. I mean, it's pathetic.
I mean, I think that's part of it. I'm not saying that we're going to be able to slow down the commercial housing development sector. Like, I don't think we could, at least not the select board, or I'm not sure how I would do it, but we can do things like when a proposal comes to make 100% affordable units, we can support it. And I was discouraged by one of the RFP discussions where it seemed like select board didn't understand like friendly 40B. They were talking about it as like capital F and lowercase f, which I don't think was helpful. I think it should have been described as like, this is a 40B that you can be supportive of, or you can be hostile to it. And if you push back and keep saying, I don't think this will work, where's the parking? That's not friendly. That's hostile. So you're doing a hostile 40B when you're trying to poke holes in their plan and delay it. And that's not the best way to get it built, in my opinion. I think that we should be actually friendly, helpful 40B developers. And I think that when something comes to the select board, like we have this tax title property that we'd love to build affordable housing on it, select board could do something crazy like say yes and say like, wow, great idea. We can turn this vacant lot into affordable housing. It sounds like you've done your research, because Affordable Housing Trust had to hire their own title lawyer to figure it out, because for some reason, like the town council doing that would have been a conflict of interest, which I don't totally get, but I'm not the lawyer. But it just seemed like another step in the, maybe this is not smoothing the process as much as it's stopping the process. And I want the select board to be smoothing the process for these kinds of projects.
Thanks, Kat. Catherine, you've got your hand up. Just got to come off mute.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that so one of the reasons I was one of the persons who was asking about the parking and so one of the roles during the proposals is to interrogate and ask all of the questions that everybody wants asked. So the discussions aren't necessarily reflective. I'm on the Affordable Housing Trust. I've been working very hard to get affordable housing in Natick. And so one of the points of the process is to ask as many possible questions so that later the public that isn't in favor of it doesn't come back and say, you didn't ask about parking, you didn't ask about birthday parties, you didn't ask about. So part of it is to ask all of the questions and do all of the homework. Many of those, you know, a lot of times when questions are asked in select board, we already know the answers. And it's a way of informing the public that we have done our homework. So that's one thing. But the other thing is, with reference to tax title and title, I just want to make a point of clarification. Since the Affordable Housing Trust is a separate, complete, different legal entity than the town, and sometimes they have adversarial, from a legal perspective, they have adversarial roles. The trust has to have its own attorney, and that was something that our trust attorney told us. We need to have our own attorney to represent the trust's interests, because sometimes the trust's interests aren't the same as the town's. Now they should be, because we all want affordable housing, but from a legal perspective, that was something that was required. And as the trust has grown and kind of gotten its own legs over the last 3 to 4 to 5 years, especially after the Bacon Street project, it's discovered that it can't be a property developer. It just can't. You have, 10, 11 volunteers, some of whom also wear other hats like me, and people who have full-time jobs. So we can't be developers. We have to put our RFPs out. We have to do those kinds of things. So I just wanted to share that clarification. And then with reference to the speed limit, Kat, have you met with the police chief or talked to him about the reasons why we didn't immediately implement a town-wide 25-mile-an-hour speed limit after town meeting authorized it?
Not specifically with the chief, but when I talked with Abby Brown, the Transportation Advisory Committee, she did give me a summary of, I think he said that like enforcement in particular would be a problem. I think if I'm summarizing it correct.
Yeah, enforcement, DPW making the signs, and then education. Mm-hmm. So so I do know we've piloted in 2 different, the board before me authorized, I think it was before me, authorized 2 different areas. One was the 5 Street intersection there at Oak, and is it Oak? No, it's not Oak. Over by Walnut School. That
the tastiest one, bacon, walnut, chestnut.
There you go. Yes. So I think they authorized it there, and then another place, with the idea of seeing how enforcement would work, educating people, giving warning tickets for six months. So it's not ideal. But I have to share my frustrations about town governance in this forum. Since I joined the select board with a passion for getting stuff done like Kat, and then realizing that you're put in on a treadmill that will not go faster than 2 miles per hour because of various things being thrown at you. It's town governments, the idea of getting more people involved is great, but if we move to a more efficient form of government, we wouldn't have to wait twice a year to get zoning articles, tax titles, and things like that. So I just wanted to share that in this forum. But thanks, Kat, and thanks for your passion.
Yeah. Thank you, Catherine. That almost felt encouraging.
Oh no, yeah. I want it to be encouraging. You're hearing my morning voice, and my morning voice on a Monday. I don't know why Coffee with a Purpose meets on a Monday, because it's the worst day of the week. And I haven't had my coffee yet. I'm still running around trying to get errands done before I make breakfast and coffee. But I want it to be encouraging. It's just that things move glacially, even when you're behind the scenes, like stabbing things with a fork.
Okay.
Thanks for that perspective. And I know Pat has his hand up, but I'll just weigh in, kind of following on from one thing Catherine said. I understand that there's some kind of town government study committee. I don't know the right name for it, but it sounds like, given your frustration with kind of the pace of things going, and whether you question whether even town meeting with 180 slots is the right form for us. Do you have any thoughts, either knowledge about what that study committee is doing, or thoughts about what they should be doing? Or
I don't know exactly what they're doing. I believe the moderator appointed people to it. I think it's Governance and Charter Review Committee. I might be wrong. Yeah, I'm not sure what they're doing. I'm curious. I'd love to know. I don't know how we would get off of town meeting. That's something that, like, I don't, are people talking about that seriously? I'm not saying I think town meeting is the best form for us. I just don't know what other options, whether it's a like municipality, a city council kind of thing, or something else. I'm not sure about that committee. Sorry.
Okay. Pat?
Yeah, I was gonna just quickly say something about, this is for Kathleen Donovan, who's, I believe, a library trustee of, talk about the slow pace. I remember a few years ago, I was on town meeting at that time, and Joe Keefe attempted to get a resolution about some additional parking at the library. And it was so painfully slow and brutal, really, when the thing had to go before town meeting. And some folks here like Sarah and, you know, Doug, are people who've been on town meeting a lot longer than I ever was. I think that that's a pretty important thing for Natick to examine, is how it's doing its government. And I think Paul Joseph, obviously, I've talked to him about it before, and he has not a proposal, but he and Carol Gloff and all these people who studied it a lot more seem to know that, or seem to think that we should do something, you know, modify our hyper democratic, crazy town meeting way of governing things. That's all I remember. But poor Joe Keefe, boy, he was just trying to get something very simple. And, you know, I had 110 or 20 people all weighing in on the parking, the zoning, and it was just crazy. It's pathetic.
Sarah?
So in terms of town meeting and so forth, I think that some of the changes that have been made recently, and actually I think coming out of some of trying to make it run better during the pandemic, to my mind, the things like they've got this consent agenda process now where they aggregate all the things that are potentially should be non-controversial and move them through all at once. That is a simple and really helpful idea. I think, Kat, you raise a good point about until you understand the finance committee process. That's kind of the key to the castle. You got to understand that. And I think somehow if we can get more information, you know, to people earlier on, if, you know, you don't just go to town meeting, go to the finance committee. If you really want to see how the sausage is made, go to the finance committee. And so I think, you know, just as an observation more than a question, if we can get that information out somehow, you know, if you've got an issue that you're passionate about, the town meeting is going to be taking up, you need to start before the first day of town meeting. You got to think about it. And I think that's a piece of communication. I don't, off the top of my head, have a particularly effective way in mind of how to do it, but I think that is important, because that's really how it all flows, is through finance initially.
Yeah. And at the same time, I don't want all 180 town meeting members to go to every finance committee meeting, because then what's the point, you know?
Yeah, well, I think, like, for myself, as I mentioned early on, you know, I try to focus my comments at town meeting to something that I think I have expertise about that probably nobody else in the room does. So I tend to be the one that stands up and says something like, when we were looking at potentially buying 22 Pleasant Street in South Natick, and there was the whole controversy about contamination on the property.
Right.
I was a licensed site professional for 25 years until I retired. Nobody else in the room has that level of knowledge. So I would stand up and speak about that. But I didn't stand up and speak about parking at the library, because lots of other people are as qualified as I am to speak about parking at the library. And I think, you know, I think you do have to kind of assume that, you know, the town meeting members that are, I don't think all of them would go to every meeting, and I don't think they would need to. But I think if you pick, you know, things that are of particular interest to you for whatever reason, then you do go.
Mhm.
I mean, I know I was very interested in the dam issue, again, coming out
Yeah.
of my background as a geologist and a hydrologist. So I went to all those finance committee meetings and I went to the select board meetings, again, because I felt like my background gave me some perspective. So just a thought more than a question.
I like hearing them.
Hey, Kat, I wanted to, I'm actually going to share my screen so I can bring up your campaign website, because I want to ask you about
Yeah, sure.
one particular part, if I can find it. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I agree. Coffee with a Purpose on Monday morning, like, we're lucky because I'm also a payroll accountant. So every other Monday, I'm running payroll. And I had to make sure I picked one of these that was not during that time. So no one's getting paid this week. They're getting paid next week.
Great. Cool. I wanted, you said on your campaign site, one of your goals is inclusive government, and that you get some bullets here. And I think you've spoken to the first one about, and we've all had some discussion about information and meetings and making those more palatable. But I was just wondering if you cared to talk more about any of these other bullets, particularly the third and fourth one about the advocate clinical position, and also the town seal, and just in general, as you phrase it, Natick's historical racism. So
yeah. All right, let's do advocate clinician first. Okay, so this is a position that's been grant funded for a long time, and now I think is maybe being funded through the town outright, but also through ARPA spending. And so it's kind of like an on-call crisis psychologist position. They call it advocate clinician, and it's someone that, can be called when someone is in mental distress, we'll say. But it's housed within the police department, which to me does not speak to equity and inclusion in our town. It honestly, a lot of the time when I don't want people to have to call the police for these kinds of issues. I think that it's something that increases the danger, even if it's the advocate clinician coming. Just the act of calling the police department for some residents is not something that they will do. It's too scary to call the police in a situation like this when you don't know if having that kind of presence will make the situation worse or de-escalate it. And the point of the advocate clinician is to de-escalate these situations. I don't see a reason why this position needs to be within public safety when we have a Department of Public Health and it's being funded by ARPA public health funds. We have a Department of Public Health that they could work out of. They're open most days. They could have like night hours or whatever they need. Right now, I think it's only $50,000 a year, so it's not like this person is working 24/7 anyway. Yeah, I think we need more positions like that throughout town, advocate clinicians, or maybe like crisis psychiatrist kind of people, because yeah, people undergo mental health challenges in Natick of all kinds, and I don't think that they should be forced to go through the police in those situations. Yeah, to me that's not equitable to me to put a position like that within public safety. Doesn't make sense. Oh yeah, I want to replace that town seal. It's yeah. I mean, as I said, I've only lived in Natick since 2015, so I don't have a particular historical connection to this image other than seeing it and thinking that's probably not right. And then I don't know if you guys want to click the form on any of this, but the former high school team name for a while, which is a slur, is still the name of a street in Natick. And I don't know why that, oh, did that link not work?
Yeah, that particular one doesn't.
This is my understanding, and I won't swear to this, I'm not 100% sure that it's right. My understanding is that the name of the developer who made that subdivision happened to be Redmond. I'm not sure if that's true, so I won't swear to that.
I'm not sure if that's true either.
That's what I have heard. So that it's a possible reason. I absolutely will not stand behind its validity, but I did know somebody who lived on that road years ago, and that's what they said.
I guess if my last name were a racial slur, I wouldn't name a street after it.
I mean, I think it raises the question, the street has been there since before this was a huge issue in town, so it, you know, maybe the residents could get together and petition the town to change it. I don't know, but anyway, that's what I've heard. I'm absolutely not saying
all
any more
of the
than
all of the
somebody
houses on the
told me
street
that.
were built in the 90s. So to me, it doesn't
That's a
seem like such a
relatively new street.
Yeah, that was before the big Redmond debate, though. I don't know. Please don't take me as saying we
Yeah,
have to
but-
keep it Redmond. I'm not saying that at all.
Mhm.
That's what somebody who lived on that street when I met them in the 90s told me. That's all I know.
So I think there's the seal, there's street names. I think if we kind of went around Natick, we could find other places where we could maybe replace what we've got with something that maybe honors the people that were here. Or even, I'm not saying like erase John Elliott's name off of everything, but, you know, include a whole story, a complete story, not just a story that someone in Natick in 1940 wanted to tell. Because a lot of these, that's what it is. Like, it's a seal that was made up less than 100 years ago.
No, I completely agree. And please don't interpret this as yay Redmond, because that's not at all what I'm trying to say.
That's not my interpretation, Sarah, but thank you.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think Natick has work to do in that department of, whether it's racial healing with the people that we live with right now in our community, or historical healing for some of the wrongs that have been done before. And I think the removing the dam is part of that. I read the Massachusetts Bay Colony records where the Nipmuc were kind of arguing against the Watertown Dam on the Charles because the alewife were not able to go back up the river, and that was in 1730s. So this is like a 400-year problem that we're still not solving. And I don't think it's aggressive to say let's solve that in the next 100 years. Like, even if the dam takes a long time to come down and the river takes a while to, you know, recalibrate itself, because it won't be how it was, it won't be how it is, but it will be how it can survive going forward.
Thanks for addressing that. I also wanted to give you kudos for your website being available in multiple languages. I thought that was really...
Oh, I think I only did English and Portuguese Brazilian.
Right. Yeah.
That's my
hey,
demo.
it's better than just English, right? So, yeah. I suppose on that topic, do you have any thoughts on how to make Natick a more diverse town? We're nowhere near as diverse as Framingham, I think.
We're not as affordable as Framingham.
And that's the reason, huh?
That's a big, like, those are very correlated. Yeah. Natick is really diverse. I know we're not as diverse as other places, but like, wow, I go to my daughter's kindergarten and I see so many different kids, and she's telling me like about holidays that I didn't know about. She's telling me how to eat halal. I'm like learning a lot.
Well, that's good. That's encouraging.
Yeah, I think, but it's tricky because so many of these people, Natick has a huge non-white population, we'll say, but a large part of that population are not born in the US and therefore can't participate in town government in a lot of ways. For example, they can't be on town meeting. I did ask, and I've asked the moderator, Frank Foss, before, because maybe it was like a diversity committee or something, but I asked him, I said, is this open to residents or is it open to citizens? Because it wasn't clear on the posting who could be a part of this. And I thought, well, you're not really going to get a good picture of Natick if you're not including any of these. I think it's up to like 15% of people that are not born in the US that live in Natick. And so it's hard to get, you know, diversity information without hearing their voices. So I'd love to have, I don't know, maybe like we have different committees already. I don't want to say I want to start a committee. I want to get those people to talk to us. I want to talk to them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh.
And, I recommended one of my neighbors who was born in India, but like she lives here. She's raising her kids here. I said, you should really get involved in this board. Like I double checked, they will let you in. But, who's going to reach out to her and ask her to be involved in Native government? No one. I mean, I guess now me, her neighbor, but before me, who's reaching out to these people? And I'm not sure the best way to get them involved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pat, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, that's very interesting, Kat. I hadn't thought about that, and I was going to just follow this up with a question. I know Jillian and Massachusetts Area Planning Council folks have been working on this issue of environmental justice quite a bit, and I think they had a forum not too long ago. I just listened to it, but what they did was they interviewed a lot of the different families, people that use Natick resources, for example, Kitchewett State Park, or even some of the road waterfronts in Dog Pond. When it gets up to 85 and above, people come from everywhere to use these resources. The state DCR is somewhat, in my opinion, a low vision organization, underfunded, understaffed. They have very few requirements for their employees to know speak another language, be able to communicate. It's a long story, but it seems like that's something that we're going to be facing. People need to cool off when it's 90 degrees, and they're coming, and they show up, and they're everywhere, and I think that I just wondered if you and the Conservation Commission and Carol Berkowitz and I worked on this problem for a few years, and if they were going to try to continue this effort to be more inclusive and visionary about how to help people who don't have private pools or they can't afford to drive to Cape Cod, or they're going to be going to cool off wherever they can. I was just wondering if you had some experience with this issue or some ideas on it.
Not particularly any experience. I want to say I love in Brighton, they have the Artisani Spray Park. And when you go there in the summer, like you see everybody there. It's great. It's geared towards families, but they have basically just flat concrete with all kinds of sprinklers that kids run through, parents run through. They have a small wading pool that's about 2 feet deep. I think that's a great model of like community cooling that they can do year round. I don't know as far as like climate catastrophe, heat wave, like what Natick is going to do. Yeah, when we have, multiple days over 90 in a row and people can't cool down. Yeah, I'm not sure.
The issue at the Lake Kitchewett is that there's no surge capacity built into the DCR budget. They close their gates, and then people flock into every available way they can to get cool off.
And I had heard that they made it so that you couldn't access the park through the rail trail either.
Right.
And I guess the argument was because of overcapacity, though to me, I feel like people are willing to walk or bike there. You should let them into the public park.
Yeah. It's an interesting dilemma.
Did you want to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to comment a little more on this process that I think it was you, Pat, was referring to, the one that with the Jillian and the Metropolitan Area Planning Council and so forth is involved in. I was recently joined that project as well, and at the invitation of Claire Rondelli, the conservation agent, and she's involved also. And so they've been going through the process of trying to winnow down is a lengthy list of possible projects in Natick. The intent of it is to use sort of work with nature to try to come up with some mitigation to make environmental benefits, climate resiliency, and so forth. And it was interesting to me to see the list of probably 15 or 20 initially proposed possible locations, Lake Cochituate that was what people were concerned about. It's like, what about this brook? What about that brook? If you look where all those brooks are, they all feed into the lake. They all can be contributing contaminants to the lake. And part of the, besides the parking issue, another issue with the lake is there's enough contamination in it. When the water warms up and the pollutants are in there, you get the cyanobacteria blooms. And that's the reason that there's been a problem with the lake is it just hasn't been safe to go to the beach there. But the intent of this project and this long-winded explanation I'm giving is to what I'm leading up to is that the intent of this project is to further winnow down to, I don't know exactly the number, but a smaller number of projects that will then get as far as being brought through the design process. There's a grant that's funding all this, and to get a number of projects through the design process and then kind of turn them back to the town, I think with the intent of then an additional grant program you could apply for to try to get them built. So I just throw all this out there to, say, Kat, this is something that I think sounds like it's kind of in your wheelhouse.
Yeah, I'm gonna look up. It was the Metropolitan Area Planning Council.
It's called the Sudbury, Assabet, and Concord River Basin Climate Resiliency Study. I can send you the link.
Great. Yeah, please send me the email link.
So I think it's a really interesting collaborative project, seeking out a lot of people's voices, and it's a really cool idea. And so if you find yourself on the select board, I think it'll be a process you'd want to be aware of just trying to help push the projects through to actual construction. So I can send you the link separately.
Brinley's asking that we put that in the chat. I'm not sure how. All right, Sarah's headed off to
run to go get it.
Right. So while she's doing that, I wanted to thank you again, Kat, for joining us. Maybe any closing thoughts? What's the top reason why folks should consider voting for you?
Okay, I'm the best candidate.
Well, yeah.
I have the energy and the passion, but I've also been building for the last 3-4 years, like my Natick foundational knowledge, and I really understand how things are moving within the town at this point. Yeah, I have so much to give Natick, and it's bursting out of the seams at me. And I really hope that I can be on the select board and kind of bring some of this. I know that one person doesn't make the select board, but I think that we need my kind of a voice on the select board too, to bring some of the younger generation of Natick and some of like the young parents in Natick onto local government. And in doing this, like, I have gotten other people on the finance committee because I've said, like, I'm lonely here. I need someone who gets me, and people apply. And yeah, I want to do more for Natick in this way, and I hope that you all support that. Let's see. Do I have any fun photos in my desk? No, I don't think so.
If Sarah isn't able to get the link right away, I'll definitely put it in a follow-up email so we all have it, and we'll send it specifically. Well, Kat, you're on the Coffee with a Purpose mailing list anyway, so
yeah. And if anyone needs a bicycle, you can come to me at Landry's. Not to me, I don't sell them. You can come to anybody else, or want to try my e-bike, you just send me an email and I'll let you take it for a spin.
All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us. Next Monday, we're going to have Rich Sidney talking to us, who's yet another candidate for the select board. And of course, I think you all know he stepped into the open slot just last year, right? So apparently it's a good gig because he's running for re-election now. So all right. Well, I'm going to stop the recording.